Folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. And although we have just come out of the holiday season, giving really never stops. And trying to make others happy and trying to better the lot and the situation of others should never really stop. And in fact, for a lot of people, it doesn't. They do it on a year-round basis, and more people than you would think. And here to talk about his new book called The Happiest Life, 7 Gifts, 7 Givers, and the Secret to Genuine Success is syndicated talk show host and author and columnist Hugh Hewitt. Hello, Hugh.
Hey, Steve. Happy New Year to you on the first full week of the broadcast year.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, and I hope it has warmed up since I fled your city on Saturday.
Well, let me tell you what you did. I don't know what you did, but I'm glad you're the one who's now to be held responsible for it. It got up to about 50 degrees early this morning. You opened the door, and it was so foggy you couldn't. The dog went out for what I call a quick one on his own, just like 2 feet in front of me, and I lost him. And now the temperatures have been constantly dropping, and by tonight it will be 8 degrees with a wind chill of minus 20. So if you're the one who's responsible for this, I'm glad we found you.
I am back in SoCal, and so happy to be out of the East Coast after a week of plugging The Happiest Life. I was making the TV rounds last week, as is typical for the launch of a book, and I loved it, except trudging through snow and ice is not something. I'm from Ohio originally, and I love cold weather, but you've got to have the right equipment, and I didn't bring it with me.
Well, all this global warming, that's what it results in.
Yeah, Al Gore has really got himself into a box now that what do they call it? The polar vortex is the term that the Weather Channel is using today. I wish I'd known that when I wrote The Happiest Life. I would have found a way to use polar vortex.
The average temperature in the country is 14 degrees. And what about that ship? The icebreaker that tried to rescue the people. Now the icebreaker's stuck and another icebreaker's going. Man, they are up a creek, but you know what? It doesn't stop the Kerrys and the Obamas and the Hillarys and the Bill Clinton at the de Blasio inaugural talking about global warming like it's happening all over the place.
Yeah, I was in New York for the de Blasio inauguration, and I could not believe that speech. I watched it live. I was sitting there in between interviews, and out of nowhere he begins to attack the far right and their love of preaching of trickle-down economics. And I looked around and I said, where exactly is the far right in New York? I don't think it actually exists there, does it?
And then Harry Belafonte and the Reverend who talked about New York as a plantation. They're all mocking Bloomberg. He's sitting there. I mean, and Hillary's up on the stage nodding, to every outrageous slander of New York and just ridiculous stuff. And I want to get, let's do this before. We'll have plenty of time to do the book, and I do want to do that, but you wrote a piece called A Memo to the Gang of 15. And I guess what you did was you picked 15 Republicans who could be running for president in 2016. And basically your message to them was, whether it's that or taking back the Senate, it's not going to be easy, so start now, right?
Start now. And there are 15 people. All of them have been touted as or tipped as possibly in. And there could be 17. I didn't include Sarah Palin or Mike Huckabee because I just don't believe they're running. And if that changes, our numbers will go up. But I encourage them to begin to focus on the fact that Hillary is going to be the nominee in 2016 because you're carrying around a Santa's bag full of vulnerabilities. And we ought not to wait until the summer of 2016 to begin to define her for the inadequacies with which she conducted herself to the Department of State, for Benghazi, for the fact she's the grandmother of Obamacare. I wrote again about it in the Examiner today, Steve, and you always talk about it. I always talk about it. Republicans can't be passive. They can't wait for the game to come to them. They got to take it out there, and especially our Senate candidates in 2014. This could be a great year for taking back common sense conservatism to the country, but they got to get out of their box and start fighting hard.
And it's going to start. The demagoguery has started. The president, I played the soundbite earlier in the show, he's sitting in Hawaii, and he talks about how Republicans went home without extending unemployment benefits. Now, he went to Hawaii. Harry Reid also went home and never passed a bill in the Senate regarding this. So, I mean, it's starting already. And if the Republicans thought by signing on to this budget that they're going to get a pass and they're going to be liked and the media is going to leave them alone, the demagoguery, the class warfare, it's all starting with this, and it's going to go to the minimum wage, and they're going to try to distract from health care as much as possible.
That's exactly. They do not want us to look at the rollout. I'll be spending time today talking with Elizabeth Vibeck of The Hill, What do we know about this enrollment? My guess is very little. I don't think there are any serious numbers on people who have actually written checks to healthcare companies.
That's the key. Right. In the real world, you're not enrolled in something until you pay the money.
Yep, you and I both know that. If we've got a video stream and you can be a member of my radio show audience or your radio show audience, you don't get to sign on until the check clears. And that is, if you want to buy The Happiest Life, that's great. You send Amazon, hey, I'd like to order Hugh Hewitt's book. That's terrific. They're not going to send it to you until the money's there.
Right.
And so there is no one enrolled until the check clears.
Right, absolutely. All right, let's talk about the book. And of course, as you mentioned, and as I mentioned, the book is The Happiest Life: 7 Gifts, 7 Givers, and the Secret to Genuine Success. And you talk about encouragement, energy, enthusiasm, good humor, graciousness, gratitude, and patience. And you document 7 givers. And talk about what led you to this. I mean, you could write out about anything you want.
How long have you been a radio guy? Because that's what led me to it. I've been
30 over 30 years.
All right. So I added up the number, and you'll have this. You start figuring out 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, 75 segments a week, and you do it for 15, 20, 25 years. I've interviewed well over 25,000 people, but to be conservative, and that doesn't include phone callers. It doesn't call the Maltberg caller, the Hewitt caller. It just means guests, like we're talking right now. And I began to think to myself after 2012, which was depressing, and 2013 was so grim. At the beginning of 2013, I would write about those people I had encountered in 25 years of television and radio broadcasting who were happy. And if I could figure out, and then use the economic research as well from people like Arthur Brooks, what are the common denominators of happiness, it might actually be interesting to me and interesting to the audience. And sure enough, it's turned out that way. Left, right, and center. And most of these characteristics of happy people have nothing to do with wealth, nothing to do with fame or celebrity, everything to do with self-sacrifice and serving others. And I happen to know, Steve Malzberg, let me embarrass you a little bit, that you are one of the encouragers, because my youngest son does producing work for WMAL on the weekends, where you occasionally will go in and help someone out. He says you are like one of the nicest guys in business that he works with. So I've actually
that's very nice. I found him to be very. I found him to be a chip off the old block. Let's just say that of you, and I wasn't surprised. But that's very nice to hear. Thank you.
There are a lot of people in our business who aren't that way.
You think so? You want to start? Tell me who you.
No, that's not encouraging. I'm just going to say you stand out. So my hat is tipped to you as being one of those guys who encourages, and that is a gift that we can all give to anyone in our life today. And I think the reason the book's being well received is that it's accessible and it makes sense to everyone who picked it up, that we can all do this stuff.
Well, talk about focus on one of the givers. I mean, you talk about who's in a good place to do this, and when you encompass parents and spouses and family members and teachers and coworkers and church members, it's basically everyone is in a position to be a giver.
Yeah, you have to be isolated not to be in a position to be a giver. But I think the one that's gotten the most attention is the chapter on friendship, because evidently there aren't a lot of guys running around who have good friends. I do. I have a guy, a knucklehead, who worked for the LA Times for 25 years, so he's a liberal. And Bill Clinton's former deputy chief of staff is my closest friend. And I have these kind of people in your life that will just tell you what is good and what is bad about how you're living your life. And I think that folks without that ought to work very hard at developing someone who's close enough to be that individual. And I don't know who your best friend is. That is also a secret to the happiest life. And Arthur Brooks says we all have family. Whether or not we want it, we all have family. and it is what it is. And we most of us have faith, and all of us have places to work. But it's this friendship variable that really does drive individual happiness. And the chapter on that is about developing and enriching those friendships that matter.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's all so important, and there are so many ways to give. Here in New York, every day I park a block away, 2 blocks away, and there are so many people who you see who are in need of something, in need of a meal, in need of a dollar, in need of a shoe, in need of I've seen it all, and it's people just walk by, you become used to it, but then again, it's the kid in the classroom who a teacher sees has a need. Maybe he's not eating in the morning. Maybe his parents aren't doing something right. Maybe he's being abused. They need to notice that. And friends, and like I said, I think the book just you really covered it all. You really did, and congratulations on that.
Well, thank you, and I do want to mention as well, you just talked about teachers, and I spent a lot of time beating up on teachers' unions, and I'm sure you have to as well. New York is notorious for its teachers' union. But I want to write a chapter on the fact that if you take the union equation out of it, most of these are men and women are of extraordinary dedication. They put in a lot of good hours. 80% of them are selfless professionals who encourage and build up kids, and coaches especially. We're going to watch tonight a couple of, I don't know if you're going to be a Florida State fan or an Auburn fan. Which one are you?
I'm kind of rooting for Florida State. You know why? I think to win the Heisman in your rookie year, to have the kind of year he had, to go through what he went through, and, in the eyes of the law, he did nothing wrong. So I root for those kind of people.
Well, both of them have got great coaches. And I've got Fred Barnes staying with me out here. Fred's son is an Auburn grad, so he came out to see the game. And so we were talking last night about coaches in America, because Fred is a sports nut.
Yeah, well, say hello to Fred. I had the pleasure of speaking with him a couple of weeks ago on the show.
Oh, I will do that. He'll be back tonight late. I'm not going up to the game because I'm an Ohio State fan and a Notre Dame fan. I don't give it a heck about tonight. I'll watch it to see. But we were talking about coaches.
Yeah.
And now that there's so many fatherless kids out there, the coach's job is going up in importance every single day. So that chapter is meant to just salute him and say, we understand, everybody gets it, and you're vital to reclaiming this lost generation. You had that knockout game crap going on.
Yep.
And I'm just going to bet that anyone who played that did not have a dad in their life. What do you think? You think I'm right about that?
I'd say the overwhelming majority who you're probably right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we have to figure out how to encourage especially the men who are working with young boys and young men to stick with it, because I think it's getting harder and harder, and we're making it harder and harder for them to be disciplinarians and role models. And people like Urban Meyer, who I admire a great deal, are not loved by the PC police because he's such a grinder and a hard-nosed guy. But they get results out of the young men they work with.
Absolutely, and they get it on the field and they get it off the field. Yep. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Hey, again, congratulations on the book. I look forward to talking to you again. The book, of course, The Happiest Life, 7 Gifts, 7 Givers, and the Secret to Genuine Success, Hugh Hewitt. And take care of yourself. Good talking to you.
Thank you, Steve Malzberg. Happy New Year.
You too. All right, folks, there you go. Hugh Hewitt. Very interesting and a very timely book. And like I said, he picks the different aspects, and it's the holiday season, and you get all the solicitations in the mail. If you give a donation to one group, you get on a mailing list, and you get so many in the mail. And then I always feel guilty throwing them away. And it's funny. Let me bring in religion for a second here, and I'm going to ruin it. But my rabbi during one of the Jewish holidays gave a sermon talking about giving charity. And, he said how, the question was asked, Rabbi, I get all these solicitations and I can't afford to, what should I do? And the bottom line is that it's better to give like $1 to 100 different groups than it is to give $100 to one charitable organization. That now, I know if I try to say exactly why that is, I'll mess it up. So I'll leave it at that. But that's what he said. So, maybe you don't need to throw all those envelopes away. Set aside what you're going to give and then just spread it out as evenly as possible in anticipation that you're going to get a lot of solicitations. Because I do feel terrible throwing those things away because, almost all of them are legitimate and worthwhile charities. How do you decide? Anyway, that's neither here nor is it there. We're coming back. Some sound you're going to want to hear, and it's right here. You're going to want to hear it, H-E-A-R. And it's right here, H-E-R-E. See, I went to New York City Public Schools when you learned something, when they were still good. Take that, Bill de Blasio. On the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve